Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. My name is John Herbst. I run the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council. We're here to talk about a new initiative, an initiative to monitor foreign interference in Ukraine's upcoming presidential elections. This idea is actually the idea of Viktor Pinchuk, who mentioned this to me as a possible project last spring. I told him it was a great idea, and with my team at the Atlantic Council, at the Eurasia Center, we worked out a proposal which ultimately became this project. This project, is a partnership of the Atlantic Council, the Viktor Pinchuk Foundation, and the Transatlantic Commission on Election Integrity, which is led by Andres Fogh Rasmussen and Michael Chertoff. We also have Ukrainian partners. We have Stop Fake, which will be part of this enterprise. We have the Razumkov Center, which is part of this enterprise. And we welcome other people who find this an important topic. We have a wonderful team assembled. The election project will be led by Ambassador David Kramer, a longtime friend of Ukraine and a longtime senior American government official. We have also, as part of our team, Laura Galante, who's in charge of cyber operations. We have Yakub Kolensky, who's in charge of disinformation. And we have Alexei Melnik of the Razumkov Center, who will be following foreign interference in the form of kinetic activities. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our colleague from the Pinchuk Foundation, Svetlana Ritsenko.
Thank you, Ambassador. If you allow, I'll speak Ukrainian. Are you okay? Thank you. Дуже дякуємо, що ви сьогодні долучилися до нашої події, до запуску робочої групи запобігання зовнішньому втручанню в вибори України. Фонд Віктора Пінчука створює та підтримує платформи, що обговорюють найактуальніші питання і проблеми, і виклики, які стоять перед Україною. І вибори наступного року, як ми всі розуміємо, не є виключенням, це точно є одним із таких питань. Ми дуже вдячні нашим партнерам за те, що ми спільно реалізовуємо цей важливий для країни проєкт. Як вже зазначив пан посол, ми це будемо робити разом з Атлантичною радою та Трансатлантичною комісією з чесних виборів. Ми дякуємо українським організаціям, що до нас доєдналися, Центр Разумкова та Stop Fake. Ми сподіваємося на вашу підтримку і допомогу в тому, аби результати, які ми будемо отримувати, ми могли донести до загальної аудиторії, які могли дізнатися про те, які втручання будуть у нас у вибори, якщо такі будуть. Тому дуже вам дякую. Ми сподіваємося, що ви матимете сьогодні можливість поставити всі питання, які у вас є, і дякую вам за підтримку. Thank you. Yes.
We will now have a word from our third partner, from the Transatlantic Commission.
I'm sorry I could not join you today, but I want to pass on one important message. We must fight for democracy because our democracies are in danger. We have seen foreign powers from Russia to Iran interfere in many recent votes, including America's presidential elections, the Brexit and Catalonian referenda, and elections in Mexico and across Europe. This has robbed citizens of their right to have a say in their country's future. Ukraine faces this challenge even more acutely. It has faced it ever since the Ukrainians chose their democratic and European path in the Euromaidan revolution. The March elections will be another opportunity for Russia and other malign actors to disrupt and discredit what it fears most, a free and independent Ukraine. Let us be clear. Ukraine is Putin's testing ground for new interference tactics. But this isn't just about Ukraine. Often what is tested in Ukraine is then redeployed in Western democracies. We already saw this with the recent naval aggression in the Sea of Azov. I'm sure this is the unofficial but very clear kick-off of Russia's interference campaign in Ukraine's elections. We should expect more of all kinds and be prepared to push back against the Kremlin's playbook. This is why the Transatlantic Commission on Election Integrity, which I co-chair with Michael Chertoff, has so enthusiastically joined the Viktor Pinchuk Foundation and the Atlantic Council to launch the Ukraine Election Task Force. I would like to personally thank Viktor Pinchuk for having come up with this innovative idea earlier this year. The task force is a new way of monitoring elections. It will deploy a team of analysts and technology tools to spot evidence of foreign interference and help prevent it. So, rather than just reporting it after the fact, we hope we can stop it before it happens. Many thanks for your attention.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, and let me also say it's a privilege for me to be a part of this important initiative with the three partners and to have an opportunity to work with my good friend, Ambassador John Herbst, again, with whom I worked when we were both in the U.S. government and the State Department. And I'm delighted to be teamed up with such wonderful colleagues on this important initiative. Elections are a critical part of any democratic development in a country, and Ukraine has demonstrated over the years that it is capable of conducting very good elections and having a peaceful transfer of power, and there are some countries that don't want to see your country do that. Elections can be a challenging thing to conduct in a proper manner. After many years of living in Washington, I now live in Miami, Florida. And the state of Florida, over the years, has had some challenges counting votes. So we approach observing of other countries' elections with a certain dose of humility, which I think is very important. But what shouldn't be tolerated is interference in another country's election from an outside force. And that's our focus in this task force, to try to anticipate and expose and shed light on outside interference in Ukraine's upcoming presidential election. And as Secretary General Rasmussen indicated, the expectation, to the extent that there might be, is that it will come from the Kremlin, from Russia. But if there is interference from other sources, we will also look to expose that as well. And we want to raise the level of awareness both inside this country, but equally important in Europe, in the United States, and Canada, and elsewhere. And that's why I think it's so important to have the three organizations involved who are capable of raising the level of awareness of what's happening in this country. So let me turn it over to my colleagues to describe in a little more detail the particular areas that they will be focusing on, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hello, I'm Laura Galante, and I'm a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and will be leading up the cyber component of our task force. Ukraine is no stranger to cyber attacks. In 2014, there was an attack on the Central Election Commission's website here in Ukraine, and that's a good indication of the type of activity that we saw for years later in the West, and then also may see again in this election cycle. But beyond direct interference on technical platforms dealing with voting, we also can expect there to be other types of cyber attacks and network exploitation across Ukrainian society and industry. For example, in 2015 and 2016, Ukrainian power grids experienced a debilitating cyber attack referred to as Black Energy. Later in 2017, perhaps the most devastating cyber attack globally happened against companies here in Ukraine and the government. It's called NotPetya. What we will see through 2019 is something that my team, based here in Ukraine and also in the US, will be watching. We're also keen to look at how we attribute these attacks, to be clear on what is actual interference from a foreign power versus attacks that may be originating here in Ukraine. That will be the work that my team does, and we'll be putting that forth to you and the public as we try to explain the indications that we see throughout this election that may point to a broader scheme of interference, especially from a technical standpoint.
Доброго дня. My name is Jakub Kalensky. I'm a quite fresh addition to the Atlantic Council. I've been with them only since last month, and the last 3 years I was in Brussels working for the European Union's East Stratcom Task Force, where I was leading on countering disinformation activities. And in this capacity, I've been traveling to Ukraine quite often, and I always gained some experience here. And I also learned that you were slightly angry with us from the West that we are not actually caring enough about what's happening here in Ukraine. And you were rightly saying that if we only followed what's happening here, maybe we might be better prepared for what's going to happen in our countries. And you were right. So I'm quite happy that this initiative is happening maybe a bit later than you would like us to, but it's happening at least now. Our aim is to show the disinformation attacks as they are happening here. And maybe it might be a bit disappointing for you. I'm not sure we will be able to help you deal with them, but what we want to do is to expose it to the Westerners, to show them what happens here, to keep reminding them that Ukraine is still a victim of aggression from the Kremlin, and to prepare them for what might happen in their countries. To prevent one question that we keep getting here during the meetings, what we want to do is to look at the Russia's disinformation attempts. So if you would like us to be looking at how the Russian disinformation gets multiplied by Ukrainian media, we are not going to do that. We want to focus solely on Russia's interference. So if you want to follow up on what's happening in the Ukrainian information space, that's going to be up to you.
Доброго дня, шановні пані та панове. Звати Олексій Мельник, я співдиректор програм зовнішньої політики міжнародної безпеки Центру Разумкова. І мені надзвичайно приємно за те, що нам поступило таке запрошення приєднатися до цього міжнародного проєкту. Насправді я не є єдиною людиною, яка відповідає за цей напрям. Я просто очолюю невелику команду в Центрі Разумкова, яка постійно буде моніторити, аналізувати події, які відбуваються в сфері, скажімо, можливого силового втручання в українські вибори. Але також Центр Разумкова періодично збирається проводити невеличкі наради, тому що ми повинні тестувати ту інформацію, яка в нас є, з нашими колегами з внутрішньої політики. Тобто, якщо ми щось фіксуємо, то це повинно бути підтверджено, що це не просто якийсь черговий акт чи ескалації, але це має бути пов'язано або опосередковано, або напряму з впливом чи можливостями впливу на українські вибори. Тобто одна частина – це моніторинг, друге наше завдання – це максимальне розповсюдження інформації. І таким чином, скажімо, у нас значно збільшуються можливості, ми цим все одно займаємося, але зараз, отримавши таку платформу потужну, ми розширюємо спектр аудиторії, особливо західної аудиторії. Ну, там, якщо я не помиляюсь, десь близько 10 тисяч підписників, які будуть регулярно отримати ці бюлетні. Ну і ще одне завдання, яке ми також ставимо перед собою, це шляхом постійного моніторингу, аналізу і своєчасного інформування ми маємо за мету попередження якихось ворожих актів Російської Федерації, тобто, як кажеться, якщо ви вчасно інформовані, значить ви до певної міри озброєні, підготовлені до цих акцій. Росія, знаючи про те, що ми знаємо про їх наміри, також, можливо, утримається від певних радикальних дій. Ще також я хотів би зазначити, що це не стосується не лише зони конфлікту чи суто діяльності Збройних сил Росії, а це, мабуть, трохи ширше те, що російські спецслужби називають активні мероприятия, тобто ми також будемо слідкувати за будь-якими силовими методами, чи то будуть акти диверсії, чи, не дай Бог, можливо, акти замахів на життя, чи, ну, тобто все, що потенційно будуть робити силові структури тут в Україні, ми будемо відслідковувати, як я вже сказав, аналізувати і максимально інформувати з метою попередити цей вплив або мінімізувати негативні наслідки такого впливу. Дякую.
Thank you very much, Alexei. And to underscore, Alexei is here to emphasize that this is not just an American or a Czech operation. Ukraine is very much involved, and Ukrainians, including Maxim Eristavi, who is with us here today, who's going to play a very important role in dealing with the media. And Laura and Jakub will have Ukrainian colleagues and partners on this as well. So don't get the impression that we're coming in from the outside without having any local partners on the ground involved in this. This will be very much an international effort that has Ukrainians as a central part of this. This is, I think, going to be a challenging time. And we are here, as some of my colleagues have said, because Ukraine is so important. And what happens in Ukraine is important because it happens in Ukraine, a country of such size and aspirations to be part of Europe, rightly so. And we are here also because, as Secretary General Rasmussen mentioned, what happens here is often going to be replayed elsewhere. From the 2014 attacks that Laura referenced to the interference in the U.S. election in 2016, it is important that we keep an eye on what outside forces, in particular the Russians, are up to here. So we're very glad to be here. We also want to emphasize that we are not looking to monopolize this field. This is an effort to work with all of you and anyone else who may be watching this to send us information, leads on what's happening, send us links to things that you uncover yourselves. The idea is to work together on this and to make this initiative part of a larger effort to ensure that Ukrainians have the free right to vote for whom they want and to determine their own future through the electoral process. So I think, John, without further ado, we can open it up.
Questions?
Hi, Jim Brook, Ukraine Business News. I just read a couple of days ago in The Guardian that last summer the Russians were saying that the Ukrainians are trying to pollute the Sea of Azov with cholera, and then American special forces were trying to insert a nuclear bomb under the bridge. This was in the Russian media apparently July, August, September, October. I'm just learning about it now, December 10th. That leads up to my question: how fast is your turnaround time going to be to react, expose, denounce? It's all very nice to 2 months after the election to come out with a great paper, an academic paper, if you excuse the expression, but we need reactions in real time to what is happening. We don't need to hear about it 6 months later.
We've developed a website, which I believe is on the handout, where we will be updating on a daily and event-based basis. So we're highly aware of the need to report quickly and debunk quickly as well, as you refer to that in your remarks. So, I don't see it here. Oh, do we not have it on there? UkraineElects.org, if I'm not mistaken, is our website. We will share it with this group afterwards, UkraineElects.org. And we're reporting in a similar fashion to how our team is designed: kinetic activities, cyber activities, and then disinformation. We'll use that as the main conduit for how we discuss and analyze current events. We'll also have a bi-weekly newsletter, and as events happen, we'll be able to report on them and send them out through that stream as well. I believe there's a sign up on the website too.
As was already mentioned, we are going to partner with local organizations. I believe I can mention from our side at least Stop Fake, and we are finalizing the negotiations with other organizations. So please do not expect directly from us that we would be the quickest reaction. It will also depend on the speed of reaction of our partners. It is obviously true that very often you can see what's going to happen in the military space by following the information space that Kremlin controls. That is true. On the other hand, it is not that 100% of what a Kremlin information ecosystem produces would get then translated into the kinetic space. So you would very often see there accusations about military activities that will not happen at all. Dividing the one kind from the other is slightly tricky, and I'm not sure this can be our role. For this, you would really have to have also some military intelligence, etc., etc.
And Jim, just on, we're not part of any government. We're a non-government project, but we fully take your point that producing something that might be of interest academically after the election is over will be of interest, particularly now that I'm in a university, but it won't have the impact that we want, which is to expose this, not quite in real time, but as quickly as possible. We're not in a position to push back on it. That's not within our mandate, but it's to provide the information for others to be aware and to take whatever steps they need to.
If I may just confirm, it's Ukraine, ELECTS.org, UkraineElects.org.
Анастасія Зануда, BBC Україна. В мене питання теж до Лори Галанте. Наскільки я розумію, ви збираєтеся відстежувати можливі кібератаки на державні органи, на системи забезпечення життєдіяльності, електричні мережі. Чи збираєтеся ви відстежувати, що відбувається у сфері соцмереж, наприклад, у Facebook, після того, що ми бачили у Сполучених Штатах, у Великій Британії? Ясно, що Facebook сам змінився з того часу трохи, але чи не розглядаєте ви це як можливе поле для своєї діяльності?
That's a great question. Thank you. So this question speaks to why we've set up two different parts of this task force. One on the cyber element, the technical piece, which my team will be looking at, where we will be seeing what networks are hacked and reporting on that news. The social media component and how information from those hacks will be used is something that Jakob's team will be looking into extensively.
And then again, I will simply refer to what I said earlier. Here it will truly depend quite a lot on the speed of reaction of our local partners. But it is obviously, apart from the information space in the print and online, apart from the information space in TV, social media are obviously one of the areas we are looking into.
We do also have close working relationships through this with the social media companies, and we will want to be able to explain what we are seeing. In addition to Western policymakers and audiences, we will also be talking closely with the tech companies and social media companies.
Bermet Talan, Kiev Post. Is foreign lobbying going to be part of your evaluation and monitoring? Because as we saw from the Manafort case, and then we're seeing that Yulia Tymoshenko is having some obscure firms paying for her lobbying in the States. Like, this is also part of the foreign influence. Are you going to look at the lobbyist?
Our work is focused on foreign interference, not the domestic political battle among candidates to become the new president of Ukraine. I think that if a candidate hires a lobbyist, that's basically a domestic matter of Ukraine, not a foreign matter. So unless a foreign lobbyist is inappropriately involved, not in advising a candidate, but trying to affect the elections illicitly, this would not be something we look at.
I would just add, interference means someone from outside getting involved without an invitation to do so. So if a lobbyist is engaged, and if that's legal under Ukrainian law, then I wouldn't describe that as interference. But interference is something that is uninvited, unwelcome, and with the design of trying to disrupt or influence in one way or another the election.
Андрій Мигаль, я задам питання українською. Чи проведений вже аналіз ризиків на основі попереднього досвіду, тобто, щоб ви могли десь озвучити, які ризики існують, бо краще запобігати, чим потім реагувати чи ліквідовувати? Це перше запитання. І друге, наскільки буде налагоджена у вас співпраця з нашими контролюючими органами СБУ, поліції, бо все-таки по кібербезпеці з власного досвіду був членом апеляційних атестаційних комісій поліції. Рівень людей, яких туди відправили, вони не... Клавіатуру розуміють, що таке, а що таке кібербезпека, вони тільки десь чули. Тобто, чи буде якісь налагодження, якісь рекомендації для наших органів, які би мали забезпечувати в силу своїх прямих службових обов'язків підтримка інформаційна, методична і консультаційна?
Well, during this trip, and we arrived, those of us from outside of Ukraine arrived on Monday. We have met with the SBU, we have met with the SSS-CIP, I got that right, and National Security and Defense Council. We're open to meeting with pretty much any government agency. We're open to meeting with any non-government agency, with civil society, with media organizations. Our goal is to try to learn from them, and to the extent that we can impart any useful information to them based on what we find during the course of our work, we'll of course do so. Preventing, I don't think we're quite in the business of preventing. We're in the business of detecting interference when it happens. And I think it's more the responsibility of Ukrainian entities to do the preventive work. And our goal is to help them, once interference happens, address it accordingly. Yeah, sure. Hold on one second.
Я також можу підтвердити, що всі ці зустрічі, які ми мали з представниками наших урядових структур, вони не лише підтверджують відкритість і готовність до співпраці з боку учасників проєкту, але також ми зустріли дуже, скажімо, обнадійливі заяви з боку керівників силових структур, тобто є розуміння з обох сторін те, що це для України робиться, і також це робиться для наших партнерів. Єдине, що я можу з Девідом, можливо, трохи, це наше різне бачення, це не те, що внутрішня якась суперечка, але я все-таки бачу також те, що один з можливих продуктів, які ми можемо зробити, це превенція якихось можливих російських актів, як приклад. Я хотів би сказати, що, наприклад, аналізуючи, що Росія може за допомогою військових інструментів буквально найближчими тижнями зробити, щоб вплинути на українські вибори, це, наприклад, потужна ескалація, яка дала б чи змусила б українську владу продовжувати воєнний стан. Тобто, Якщо про це постійно говорити, а тим більше, якщо спонукати владу до того, щоб влада чітко задекларувала, що ця ескалація не змусить їх змінити рішення. Тобто вибори відбудуться так, як вони призначені 31-го. Ми змогли це зробити в 2014 році, ми зможемо це зробити зараз. І таким чином, я думаю, що це буде певна демотивація Росії до вжиття подібних заходів. Тобто, якщо вони знають, що вони не досягнуть цілі, тоді вони, очевидно, не будуть йти на зайвий ризик.
Actually, just to reinforce Alexei's point, there's no difference between us. There's, in some of what we've already done, we do stress the importance of staying on track. Conducting the election as scheduled, conducting it in a free and fair fashion will demonstrate that nothing will deter this country from the path that it has chosen. However the election turns out, that's up for Ukrainians to decide. That's not up to this task force. But the best way to deal with efforts of outsiders to interfere is to show that they're not going to succeed and that you will conduct the election as you had planned.
Доброго дня, Марина Євтушок, Апостроф. В мене питання таке більше з практичної площини. Чи могли б ви, будь ласка, розкрити алгоритм роботи? Тобто, який кейс може стати приводом для того, щоб його аналізувати, яка методологія цього аналізу і якою буде відповідь, які канали донесення інформації будуть? Тобто, в нас же більшість людей отримує інформацію з телевізора. Ви будете співпрацювати тільки з інтернет-виданнями, і це буде лише на сайті? Чи планується співпраця з більшими медіа для того, щоб більшу аудиторію охоплювати? Дякую.
Do we each want to take?
I'm not sure that it can be described as in a sophisticated way as algorithm precisely. When we notice or when we get notified about a disinformation attack targeting the Ukrainian elections, we will try to expose it. I know that it might sound that it might be not extremely useful for you, but the purpose, as we mentioned in the opening speeches, is basically to highlight what's happening here for the Westerners for two main reasons: to keep reminding them that there is still a European country under attack from various strands, be it cyber, be it information, be it military operations. And the second reason, to basically warn them that what's happening here might happen also there. I remember from my times in that Brussels task force that if we manage to highlight a piece of disinformation early enough, for example, when it was only in Vkontakte pages at some Donbass separatists sites, we could hear from Lithuania, from Sweden, from Czech Republic, you have shown us a piece of disinformation before it was actually translated into our outlets. So by exposing a piece of disinformation early enough, you can vaccinate further audiences from getting infected by this virus. So this would be the pattern of work in this disinformation part, and I believe pretty much also, but I will let my colleagues say that. That's the algorithm, if this is what you're asking about.
To add to Jakob's point, I think in some cases we will be using open sources, including reporting from people like you, to be able to summarize and explain what is happening. In other cases, where we're going to be leaning on our partnerships within the government and then with private sector and civilian organizations to bring to light information that has not yet been published. So I think it will be a combination of those two different areas where we will be using those two sources to describe what's happening, and then we will be putting that out on the website. So, I imagine that the majority of it will be bringing together data points and not necessarily breaking news per se, but we'll see what happens.
Through our Ukrainians, Alexei and Maxime too, we'll have people on the ground who will be available for interviews, for commentary, to amplify what we're doing through the website and other actions that we take.
Thank you. Jim Brook again, Ukraine Business News. Jakub, this is maybe more for you. As you know, for now 2 or 3 years, Ukraine has been asking Facebook to open an office here, staffed with Ukrainian speakers. After the big Washington Post story of, I think, last month, that came to the fore again. Have you heard if Facebook is indeed going to open this office? We've got a 90-day countdown to the election. Is there any movement on the social media side there?
I believe actually Laura might know more about this.
I have not heard that they're opening a Ukraine office, but that's only my sourcing.
I'm sorry, I will not really tell you. Yeah, for me, actually, social media were always just one of the channels spreading the disinformation, and I was rather more interested in the content of the message than the channels via which it gets spread. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Державний сектор ми, я знову українською задам, державний сектор ми отримали відповідь, а яку допомогу ваша організація потребує від громадської спільноти України? Тобто, хто вам потрібен і як вони могли б до вас звернутися?
We're open to pretty much anybody who is interested in this area, is interested in working together with us. Again, Alexei and Maxime would be the local points of contact here, and others that we bring on with this initiative, partners. This project will depend in large part on working together with the NGO community, with media organizations. And as I said earlier, we have no monopoly in this area. This is one that is, we feel, so important that it requires collaboration and partnership with many different entities, even on a very informal basis.
If I may, again, I will talk about the experience I had in East Stratcom, which is probably also why I was brought on this team. But from my experience, obviously it is crucial for us to be partnering with the biggest and most experienced organizations like StopFake, as I already mentioned. But not only that, even like individuals or smaller NGOs can really help us a lot. For example, the recently tragically died Sasha Nikonorov. He was a tremendous help for what we were trying to do. He was precisely the guy who would be able to show you a piece of disinformation when it was only on some very marginal sources, when not many people actually cared about it. I think he was actually the first one who brought to our attention this piece of disinformation that Ukrainian armed forces are being joined by ISIS fighters. I think it was November 2015, after a few weeks of recycling on Russian control outlets. It was Dmitry Kiselyov who said, as we know, as many media said, ISIS fighters are now joining Ukrainian armed forces. This is actually something where a local NGO that knows the local sources of information might be even much more helpful than someone who is working from the center. We had precisely this experience. You can't really expect that someone who is in the capital will know everything about what's happening in the countryside, and you can't expect that someone who's working from a DC office, or in my case from Prague, will be extremely quickly aware of what's happening in Zhytomyr or Chernivtsi. So yeah, the local NGOs can be of crucial help, and the quicker they get in touch with us or alert us about something we should know about, the better for this project.
Я не спеціаліст в журналістиці чи інформуванні, але моє бачення, тому що я часто з вами спілкуюся як той, кого запитують. Ви, по суті, всі вже в цьому берете участь, тому що більше чи основне джерело, яке ми використовуємо, це відкриті джерела інформації, це те, про що рапортують наші ЗМІ чи зарубіжні ЗМІ. Тобто ви вже і так в цьому берете участь. Що б я вам запропонував, наприклад, те, що ми пояснювали, що частина, що стосується військової складової, це не буде ще один сайт, який буде інформувати про події, які відбуваються на українсько-російському фронті, чи то на Донбасі, чи то в Азовському морі. Тут буде інформація та, яка, на наш погляд, має відношення до впливу Росії чи втручання Росії в українські вибори. Тобто, якщо ви в своїх десь репортажах, можливо, інтерв'ю, які ви берете, задасте оце питання чи військовим, чи нашим політикам, чи просто експертам. Тобто ми будемо будувати це те, що називається оцей awareness. Тобто, якщо ви людей, чи ми будемо спонукати людей думати над тим, що, бо дивіться на це уважніше, тому що якщо просто йде інформація про те, що вздовж кордонів України 120 тисяч військ, має це відношення. А ви запитайте, а яке це має? Чи це має дійсно відношення до якогось втручання виборів? Я думаю, що таким чином ми дійсно краще всі будемо розумітися в цьому. А ми будемо робити свою посильну частину. Звичайно, як вже сказав Дейвід, ви знаєте, більшістю з вас я знайомий особисто, тобто ви знаєте координати, будь ласка, я завжди готовий.
Yes, I'll add one more very, very tactical way to assist, and it's this: if and I say this with a bit of risk, but if you have an email that is particularly suspicious, we would be interested in seeing something like that. If you come across or your website itself experiences a DDoS or any other type of degradation or disruption attempt, again, an interesting tidbit. If your sources feel that their email is either being looked at or they are themselves receiving particularly suspicious emails, those types of leads are incredibly useful and would be something that our team would be interested in following up on. We'll find a mechanism for submissions, again, on our website, ukraineelects.org.
And just keep in mind that our focus here is on outside interference. So we're not going to get involved in domestic disputes, business disputes, even candidate-to-candidate disputes. That's for Ukrainians to figure out. Our focus is on what's coming from the outside into this country.
Можливо, українською підкажете, що очікувати українцям в інформаційному просторі, знову ж таки, або яких атак очікувати українцям, до чого придивитися, якщо ось навіть з тих же ж листів звичайним українцям якісь поради, можливо, дасте?
Do you want to start? Okay. So I would be looking for a couple different indications for foreign interference, and in particular Russian interference, just to be direct. The Russian APT group, or Advanced Persistent Threat Group, known by APT-28 or Fancy Bears, which is the GRU, frequently uses spear phishing, so phishing emails of themes that are of interest to their targets. Now, I know that's broad, but if you're a journalist and it's some detailed new headline, right, or something that's particularly interesting to you as a journalist, that's sometimes an indication that thought has gone into you in particular as a target, right? If it seems too good to be true, it might be. I would be looking for targeted information sent to you. The other sort of indication that you may be looking at something that's originating outside of country is simply through the tracking of that activity. So whether the IP addresses and the forensics behind it are coming out of Russia, you as a journalist or person yourself probably aren't going to be doing that analysis. But where security companies here in Ukraine and other civil society and actors who are focused on monitoring the information space here from a technical regard, where they are seeing anomalous activity in the malware and in the infrastructure hitting networks. Those are good indications that we should dig deeper into who might be behind those types of attacks. I'll turn it over to you for a little bit more on the information side.
I believe, and it's kind of confirmed by the meetings we are having here, that it's probably still too early to talk about, promoting or attacking a very specific candidate. If you have a look at how, for example, the campaign before the French elections looked like, they weren't very sure which candidate to promote or which candidate to attack until a very late stage of the campaign. It also depends on how the polls are coming up and down. I think at this stage, 4 months before the elections, it will be mostly about undermining the trust of the citizens into the fairness of the electoral process. This trying to persuade consumers of the media that the elections will be rigged, that there will be some falsification, that also the citizens shouldn't trust the whole post-Maidan development, to make them doubt whether the course on which Ukraine currently is, whether it is the right one, and whether you actually shouldn't hit the brake or even go on the other side. I think that although it might be more abstract, it is certainly something that I would advise you to have a look at, because it might be potentially very corrosive. And if you prepare the ground by sowing discord and spreading doubt and fear for a long time enough, if you prepare the ground, then the tactical operations that may come even just a few days before the elections, they might be much more impactful when the audience is already prepared that something might be fishy around the elections. So that would be my advice, but I am sure this will have a development the closer we will get to the election day.
In January 2017, the U.S. intelligence community concluded in assessing Russian interference in the U.S. election that the Kremlin had three main objectives. One was to try to discredit the whole process, to sow divisions, as Jakub was describing, to create further controversy, inflame controversy that maybe already existed. The second goal was to damage the candidacy of one candidate, obviously Hillary Clinton, and the third goal was to boost the candidacy of the other candidate, Donald Trump. I think that broad pattern could be repeated here. And the idea of trying to, as Jakub mentioned, undermine the sense of credibility in the electoral process, to sow doubt in Ukrainians' minds about authorities, to defend against outside interference, that, I think, is a virtual certainty. Maybe, as Jakub mentioned, it might be a little too soon to assess the degree to which they want to hurt certain candidacies and help certain candidacies.
Maybe just also to be at least a bit more specific, this sowing discord and amplifying divisions, it usually goes via promoting as extreme voices as possible. So you might see on Russian outlets Ukraine being represented by the most radical voices, although they do not represent the mainstream. So you are trying to, basically destroy the mainstream from the outside by promoting both extremes. I think this is certainly something you might want to look at. And obviously exploiting some historical issues or regional issues, national minority issues, this is definitely part of Kremlin's toolkit. So I guess it could be expected that, for example, some Polish-Ukrainian tensions or Ukrainian-Hungarian tensions might be exploited. These are probably the areas I would look at. Also, probably the messaging, that, for example, that Oleksandr Usovsky was paying 500 bloggers in Ukraine for, that Ukraine is not Europe and doesn't belong in Europe and will never belong in Europe, and that Europe doesn't care about Ukraine, which in my opinion, can all be classified as pure disinformation because this is simply not true. I would also have a look at promoting this kind of messaging.
Всі знають, що в Україні працює п'ята колона і працюють політики проросійські. Нам, насправді, з ними важко боротися. Вони намагаються дестабілізувати ситуацію в країні і посилити контроль Росії над Україною. Ми знаємо ці прізвища. Проте, хочу запитати, чи вам відомі ці прізвища? Якщо так, то не могли б ви їх назвати? І, власне, що ми можемо робити з цим?
There may be candidates who want a different approach or policy toward Russia. That may not be influenced by Russian efforts to interfere in the election. There may be candidates who will criticize the current government and its policies in dealing with the Russian threat, with domestic issues, with corruption. So there may be some instances where the positions of those candidates will coincide with Moscow's interests, but they may not be inspired by Moscow. So what we want to do is to find where there is interference coming in from outside that may be tapping into those views, maybe exploiting those views, but the views in and of themselves of candidates isn't necessarily evidence of foreign interference.
I think the only thing we can try to do is expose what the outside forces, and in Ukraine's case it's going to be 90% Kremlin, what they are doing, and it will probably be up to Ukrainians to show that person A or person B is playing into Kremlin's hands via repeating, for example, the same messaging. I am from Czech Republic. Maybe you have heard about our president. If you should describe someone as a fifth column serving the Kremlin in Czech Republic, it would be him. What can people in my position do? I mean, I can't change 5 million voters, can I? I can only say he repeats the lies that 2 days ago were on Pierwý kanál. And it is up to the voters actually then to decide what they are going to do about it. But yeah, I can give them my expertise via following the horrible shows of Kiselyov and Solovyov, and I hope someone will treat me nicely for that. And I can just show to the audience this person is multiplying Kremlin's messaging. That's the only thing I can do.
And just to put a final point on it, since our work is specifically and exclusively focused on foreign interference, that should allow a clarity of analysis for Ukrainians trying to understand which actors are picking up on those foreign, potentially Russian narratives and portraying those in domestic politics and in the election.
I would like to thank you all for coming. You have our coordinates. You can find us our dashboard. You can provide to us. Actually, I'll leave some cards on the table. If you want to, if you're not receiving our newsletter, which we are sending twice a week, and want to, send me an email, and we'll make sure. Yeah, try every other. What did I say? Twice a week. Oh, every other week, twice a month. Twice a month. We'll make sure you get this. And we encourage you to send this to your friends and your colleagues. And if you see clear instances of disinformation, будь ласка, let us know, because we consider you our partners in this effort.
And our thanks to Interfax for hosting us here today. Very grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
David, you hit that hard question exactly right. And you can see how good our team is.
I'm glad that you did it. It gave me a good reason.